What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Trank. Today I'm going to be showing how I do some awesome custom organization within my SYSTAINERS here. There's going to be some of the things that are available for you guys, so be sure to stay tuned. It's going to be pretty awesome. I think there's some pretty cool things that I came up with. So let's go ahead and dive into the video. Okay, so this organization is built around using these laser cut templates that I've come up with. These perfectly fit the internal dimensions of the SYSTAINER T-Lock 1 through 5. I plan to make these available soon on Etsy for purchase, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll make an announcement. And I've also planned to develop the inserts for all the other SYSTAINERs and the SYSTAINERs and things like that. So stay tuned, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming, so let's take a look how I use these. The first thing I wanted to make a better organizer for was for my DeWalt palm router. And so what I'm going to be doing here is laying out the plunge base and the fixed base to kind of get an idea of how I want these to sit in the SYSTAINER. Basically what I'm doing here is just looking for the best way to seat them so that they're going to be, most stationary when I add some sort of attachment. Most of this is pretty much doing things by eye and just doing it until they fit. So what I do here is cut some 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood and then put about an inch half Forstner through there to get this sort of semicircle cut out. That's going to act as a slot to actually hold the handles of that plunge base. After a little bit of experimenting, I use one of them to cut to length and then just keep going back and forth between the plunge base to see when it sits horizontally, and still has contact with the ground, if that makes any sense. Once I have that fit, I set those down in order to eye where they're going to go. I then go into Fusion 360 and model up some brackets that'll convert the 1/2-inch Baltic birch piece into a nice piece that I can actually screw into that MDF insert. So you can see here I'm left with a nice bracket that'll take that and accepts 4 number 6 screws. I then bring this over to the 3D printer to print that out. I'm printing this on the Monoprice Mini and Delta, and I'm doing it out of PETG, so it's going to be a bit stiffer, a bit sturdier than your normal PLA prints. So again, you can see these just pop into place, and there's spots to screw that in, and then you can screw that into the side, and then you can also screw them, of course, into the insert. Now the 1/2-inch insert was going to be a bit too thick in order to fit those in there. It was catching on the lid, so I actually took 2 of my 1/4-inch, these are plywood, so they're undersized 1/4-inch, and laminated those together, so that's going to give me, a bit under 1/2 inch, which will be perfect. So I just glued and clamped those together. I then put that insert in, and again, lay out where I want that plunge base to sit, and then screw this in. And this is pretty much the process you're going to use for all your tools, is you'll lay out how you want them in there, figure out how you're going to attach and get them to stay in place, and then you're just going to screw those into the inserts. Once you have that, you'll have a perfect way to set your tool into the SYSTAINER without it rattling around. Now for the fixed base, all I did was 3D print and glue in another little bracket, basically a semicircle, which is the diameter of the motor on the router. And actually with just this one piece alone, it was able to sit in there just fine. I love these SYSTAINERs from Thanos because you've got the extra compartments in the lid itself to keep smaller components. Then you don't have to find a spot for them in the main chamber. You can see here, these then fit perfectly into place. And actually that fixed base it only needed the one piece to get it to stay in place, so that was pretty nice. And here you can see I put that pretty much to 90 degrees and they don't go anywhere, and so this is going to be perfect because now you can jostle around your SYSTAINER without worrying about it. So you'll see for this Bosch router I had to get a little more creative because I wanted to sit in the SYSTAINER upright, and so what I had to do is model and 3D print this clip which actually follows that contour. Here are the bracket configurations for the Bosch router. These fit the contour of the router, and these I can screw into the base, and that's essentially what we got going. Okay, so I set this in here how I want the router to be placed, and so what I'm going to do is just trace around the brackets and then drill those out and attach those. And then there's plenty of room here later if I get the plunge base for the Bosch router, then I can put that here and the cord can just sit in the middle. So I'm just going to screw these down now. So you can see here I'm using the same bracket adapters that I used on the DeWalt router, which basically take that 3/4 plywood and convert it into sort of this nice flared base that it can easily screw into the inserts. Now, if you don't have access to a 3D printer, I recommend you look around where you live. There might be a makerspace or a library, or there's most likely somewhere where you can get free access to a 3D printer and model and print similar brackets yourself. But these are easily screwed into place and make a perfect spot for the Bosch router to just stand. You can see that the main motor there is actually resting on the insert, so that's taking most of the weight, while the uprights basically take away the slack and keep it from racking back and forth. And again, those thumb tabs can be easily used to insert and remove the insert so that you can use it again. Okay, so you can see what I've done with this one is I went ahead and actually put on this dark gray T-lock handle just to kind of differentiate what tool it is, you know, a blue or gray for Bosch. So you can see the router is securely in here. You know, we can move it around and it doesn't go anywhere. Right now I have the wrenches and my collar insert and my other attachments here. I just have them loose because I'm going to be getting the plunge base for this, and I'm going to obviously put that here, so I don't want to figure out a spot for these until I've put that in place. The other thing I've done is on my inserts is I've added these finger holes here, so you can actually get this insert out in about 10-15 seconds, and so that makes it perfect. So you can still get this out and edit how you have it laid out, or use a sustainer for something else if you have to in the future. So adding this in was a key feature, and that will pretty much wrap up this one. Okay, so another great way to get your sustainers organized, especially if you're going to be putting small tools in here, you know, non-power tool type things where you can make the setup I was just making, is this Kaizen foam. Now, I don't know if you've used Kaizen foam, but it works super well. You can essentially cut out slots that perfectly match your tools. These ones you can get for $10 each. They perfectly fit the T-locks 1 through 5. You can see I've got these cutouts to perfectly fit all my lathe attachments, so you can see they're really easy and accurate to cut out, and it'll perfectly organize your things so that they have a spot. And more importantly, you can see I just tipped that at like a 45-50 degree angle, and everything just stays in its spot, which is really awesome. I have these silicone packs in here just to keep it dry so I don't get rust on anything, but all my lathe attachments are in this one, and as I get more, you know, accessories that need a configuration like this is what I'll do. So this is a great way to do it, and just to show, I'm going to cut out, I have another chuck that I need to put in here, so I'm just going to show the process for sort of cutting that out and getting it to fit. So it's surprisingly easy to cut out slots that perfectly fit your tools, and the two things you're going to need is some sort of Sharpie. I got this one directly from Fast Cap, and basically it's got a long nose here so you can carefully trace around your things. And then also just one of these utility knives where you can put it out a long distance. That's going to allow us to cut out the foam layers. And let's go ahead and cut out spots for this chuck and chuck key. So the thing to keep in mind when doing this is that you definitely want to start on the small side of the cutouts, because if you start out by cutting it out too big, your piece is going to be loose and there's basically no going back, but you can of course always remove a little more material. So you can see here I set the depth with the blade and then use sort of a sawing action to cut it out. You want to cut it out section by section depending on what height the blade's going to be plunging to, using your fingers to kind of peel out the foam, and it actually comes out really easily. I'm always surprised at how good the results are, considering I don't really know what I'm doing when I do it. So of course, because the main shaft here, the shank on it is going to be shallower, I then do a shallower insert so that fits snug in place. The chuck key is done the same way by just tracing it out. And again, you want to reference how far down you want to cut into the foam, and just do them section by section depending on the cut depth. Now for really thin parts like this, I like to use a pair of needle nose pliers to remove the foam because you can't really get your finger in there. But you can see that it comes out pretty much just as good as doing it any other way. I can then put the foam back into the sustainer and get everything back in its place, and it's really satisfying to see everything have a spot and you always know where things go. Okay, so you can see it's actually pretty easy to make those cutouts. You can even get the different tiered heights and more complicated shapes like these chuck keys, and it actually works really well. the foam will kind of expand. You want to start small and work your way up. You don't want to overcut it, cut it too big to start out, and it'll kind of expand to fit them perfectly. And then the best thing is that, you know, you can tip this practically at 90 degrees. I'm not going to go right to 90, and they don't go anywhere. So now you can actually use this as the T-locks are designed to, you know, open this one if there's something under this sustainer that you want to get to, and these aren't going to go anywhere. So it's a great way to get parts like this organized. Now this one doesn't have to do with any sort of custom organization, but I really like this SYS toolbox. I really like how it flips out, and if you put this on top of your stack, it gives you access to a lot of your key tools. Right now what I've got in here is a bunch of like my screws, my wood screws that is, and I just get them, I keep them labeled, and then I also have some of my electrical stuff in here. And not like small electrical components, you know, larger things, my crimping wires and heat shrink and soldering equipment, stuff like that. So I really do like this one, and I'm probably going to be relocating all my wood screws to the new Gen 3 parts organizer SYSTAINERS, which have a clear lid and more room for these boxes. So keep an eye out in the future for that, because I think that's a great way to organize wood screws. I keep my machine screws and threaded bolts and things like that organized a different way, but this is how I want to do the wood screws, so I just wanted to point this out. Alright, that's going to do it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. It was really fun making some of these custom organization solutions. I plan to do a lot more of it in the future. I work a lot better in a space where I know where things are and things are in their spot and it's clean and organized. Of course, right now, you can probably see from my breath, it's freezing cold here in Minnesota, so I haven't been able to do as many woodworking projects as I'd like, so I'm going to be doing a few other sort of different type of videos, but I still think you guys are going to enjoy them. So be sure to subscribe, guys. I really would appreciate it. Like this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.